Somewhere on a major league field right now, one player's knees are absorbing 1.5 times his own body weight over and over for 3 straight hours. Another player's elbow is generating more torque than a helicopter rotor blade once every 5 days for 6 straight months, and a third guy is standing in the grass with excellent posture, occasionally jogging a few feet, getting paid the exact same major league minimum as both of them. Same sport, same 9 innings, completely different bill coming due on the body. We ranked all 8 positions from least destructive to the one that will genuinely wreck you, counting down to the job that doctors quietly agree is the worst seat in professional sports. Corner outfield, least destructive. Number 8, the safest real estate on the diamond, the corner outfield spots, left and right field. On an average night, you're looking at somewhere around 2 to 3 batted balls hit your direction across 9 full innings. That's not a workload. That's a light chore. You spend most of the game standing in fair territory with good posture, tracking a ball here, jogging after one that rolled to the wall there, occasionally sprinting hard enough to actually sweat. The physical demand is real, but it's front-loaded almost entirely into the arm and the occasional all-out sprint, not into repeated joint stress. A right fielder with an elite throwing arm, the kind that gets clocked in the high 90s from the warning track to third base, is putting real strain on a shoulder, but he's doing it a handful of times a game, not hundreds. Left field asks for slightly more attention, since the majority of hitters in the league are right-handed and tend to pull the ball that direction, but even at its busiest, a corner outfielder's night is defined by long stretches of waiting punctuated by short bursts of effort. It's the only position on this list where a genuinely elite athlete can survive a bad defensive instinct or two without the game punishing his body for it every single time. The exceptions prove the rule. Aaron Judge, at 6'7" and close to 280 pounds, runs a 60-yard dash fast enough to make NFL scouts uncomfortable and has been clocked throwing in the high 90s from the corner all the way to third base. But even a player built like a lighthouse is still, physically, doing a job with a far lighter workload than anyone standing in the infield. Left field has historically been just as forgiving on the body, which is exactly why the sport has parked some of its most offense-first, defense-optional legends out there for entire careers, using the position's low physical demand as a place to hide a bat that was too valuable to bench. That trade-off shows up across generations. Barry Bonds played left field into his late 30s while still producing historic offensive numbers, in large part because the position simply never asked his legs for the kind of punishment an infielder or catcher absorbs on a nightly basis. Ted Williams played left field at Fenway while flying combat missions as a Marine pilot in the off-seasons of his career, a scheduling reality that would be unthinkable for almost any other position on this list, purely because corner outfield genuinely leaves that much in the tank. Center field. Number 7, and the outfield gets considerably more serious. Center field is the position that actually earns the outfield's reputation for being demanding, because roughly a third of every out recorded by an outfield in a season goes through the center fielder's glove. Left field defers to you. Right field defers to you. Every gap ball, every borderline call between you and either corner man belongs to you by default. That translates into legitimately punishing mileage across 9 innings, sprinting from foul line to foul line, closing on line drives at a dead run, and covering ground both fielders on either side of you are counting on you to reach. The stress here isn't concentrated in one joint the way it is deeper in the infield. It's distributed across the entire body through repeated full-speed sprints, sudden direction changes chasing a badly hit ball, and diving attempts at the warning track. It's the outfield equivalent of a distance runner's workload layered on top of a sport that also demands split-second reaction time, which is exactly why center fielders, more than either corner outfielder, tend to describe their legs as the first thing to give out by the late innings of a long game. Mike Trout has spent his entire career covering center field for the Angels, closing roughly 30 feet of outfield per second at top speed, with jump reads on fly balls fast enough that scouts measure his first step in tenths of a second. Ken Griffey Jr., a generation earlier, played the position with a combination of speed and instinct that let him run full speed at a wall and still make the catch at the very last possible moment. The kind of red that only comes from thousands of routine sprints wearing down a body that, from the outside, always looked effortless. The position rewards exactly that illusion, making a genuinely brutal physical workload look like it costs nothing at all. There's also a quieter cost buried in the box score itself. A center fielder typically posts the same basic defensive statistics as either corner outfielder, putouts, assists, a fielding percentage that looks similar across all 3 spots. even though the actual ground covered to produce those numbers is dramatically higher. The position's toll rarely shows up as a single dramatic injury. It shows up as a career that simply ages a year or two faster than a corner outfielder's does, one full sprint at a time. First base, number 6, and we move into the infield, where the math changes completely. Roughly 2/3 of every out recorded anywhere on a major league field ends with a throw to first base. Every ground ball on the left side, every routine tap back to the pitcher, every relay from the outfield when a runner's trying to stretch a hit, all of it funnels through your glove eventually. You are the terminal point of almost the entire defense. What makes first base brutal isn't speed or distance covered, it's the sheer volume and unpredictability of what you're asked to catch. Balls in the dirt, high throws sailing over your head, wide throws pulling you completely off the bag while a runner bears down the line at full speed. You're not just catching a baseball, you're doing it while stretching your entire body into a split, absorbing bad throws that were never actually aimed at you, and doing it dozens of times a game without complaint. It's a position built for players who've made peace with the fact that their body is essentially a backstop for everyone else's mistakes, night after night, for 162 games a year. Prince Fielder built an entire Hall of Fame caliber career, stretching a 275-pound frame across the bag with a flexibility that looked mechanically implausible from the outside, and Albert Pujols played the position deep into his 40s, absorbing that same volume of imperfect throws for over 2 decades on his way to 700 career home runs. First base has always attracted players whose bodies were already trading power for mobility elsewhere on the field, which is exactly why the position exists in the first place, as a landing spot for exactly that kind of physical bargain. The unglamorous part of the job is how invisible the damage is in the box score. A first baseman who scoops a short hop throw out of the dirt to end the inning gets a single putout on the stat sheet, the exact same credit as a routine catch in right field, even though one of those plays involved absorbing a baseball traveling in an unpredictable direction at close range, and the other involved catching a ball that arrived exactly where it was supposed to. The wear accumulates in a place no traditional statistic ever measures. Second base, number 5, and this is where the list stops being about volume and starts being about collision risk. A ground ball comes in at over 100 miles an hour. The shortstop fields it and fires it to you, and you've got a fraction of a second to catch it. Plant your foot on the bag, pivot, and get a throw off to first, all while a 200-plus pound base runner is closing on your left knee at close to 20 miles an hour with the explicit intention of breaking up the play. That's a double play, and a full-time second baseman turns somewhere around 80 of them across the season. Each one is a genuine physical gamble. Get your footwork a half second late, and you're not just missing the out, you're absorbing a full-speed slide directly into the joint that keeps you employed. The position also demands more total ground covered than any other infield spot. You're sliding over to cover first on bunts, rotating to cover second on stolen base attempts, and relaying cutoffs from the outfield. It's less a defensive position than a full-body insurance policy that occasionally gets collected on by a runner who's specifically trying to hurt you. Jose Altuve, listed at 5'6" and 166 pounds, has spent his career absorbing contact from base runners who outweigh him by 50 pounds or more in a sport where pitchers routinely throw at triple-digit speeds to begin with, and still won batting titles and an MVP doing it. Dustin Pedroia played the position with an intensity teammates described as treating every single game, spring training included, like a World Series elimination game. The kind of approach that wears a smaller frame down faster than the highlight reel ever shows. Second base doesn't ask for size. It asks for a willingness to keep getting up. Modern rule changes have softened the collision element somewhat, restricting how aggressively a runner can target the pivot man on a double play. But the footwork demand hasn't changed at all. You're still catching a throw traveling well over 90 miles an hour, converting it into a release in a fraction of a second, and doing it from body positions that would be considered reckless in almost any other athletic context. The rule change protected the knee. It never touched the workload that puts the knee in danger in the first place. Third base, number 4, and the reaction window shrinks to something that barely qualifies as human. A baseball hit at over 100 miles an hour off the bat covers the 90 feet to third base in under half a second, which means there's no meaningful gap between the ball leaving the bat and you needing to already be moving. You don't have time to see it, process it, decide, and then react. The read and the reaction happen as the same event, which is why third basemen describe their instincts less as reflexes and more as pre-trained flinches, drilled in through thousands of repetitions until the body just moves before the conscious mind catches up. The physical toll comes from the position's total lack of a soft landing. You're diving on dirt that's actively shifting under your cleats, backhanding balls at the very edge of the outfield grass, and firing off-balance throws across the diamond in well under a second, over and over, for an entire summer. There's a reason the position picked up its nickname as a warning rather than a compliment, because everyone who plays it eventually collects the bruises, the jammed fingers, and the occasional broken bone that comes standard with living that close to a ball moving that fast. Nolan Arenado has built a decade of elite defense at the position with a lateral range of nearly 30 feet in either direction. Routinely making plays his own body position should physically prevent him from reaching. Mike Schmidt, widely considered the greatest third baseman to ever play the position, fielded it with such consistency across 18 seasons that his own coaching staff reportedly used him as a psychological anchor during rough stretches, a living reminder that at least one part of the field was airtight, even while his knees and hands quietly absorbed the cost of that reliability night after night. The position also carries a specific kind of mental toll that doesn't show up in any injury report. Because the reaction window is so short, third basemen spend the entire game in a state of physical readiness that never fully relaxes, even between pitches. A low-grade tension that compounds across 9 innings and 162 games in a way that's harder to quantify than a torn ligament, but very real to anyone who's actually played the position at a high level. Shortstop. Number 3, and this is where the sport puts its most gifted athletes specifically, because the job demands the largest coverage area on the entire field. Your range stretches from the edge of third base territory all the way into an overlap zone with second, and your arm has to make throws anywhere from 50 to well over 100 feet, from every conceivable off-balance body position in under a second to have any chance of getting a fast runner out. The physical bill here isn't one single brutal moment like third base. It's a marathon of extreme moments stacked on top of each other for 9 innings straight. You're ranging far to your left on one play, diving into the hole on the next, then spinning and firing off platform because there's no time to square your shoulders properly. Add in the fact that shortstops are also expected to serve as the infield's defensive quarterback, calling positioning and coverage on every single pitch, and you get a position that wears down not just the joints, but the nervous system itself, which is a large part of why so many shortstops quietly get moved to second base once they hit their 30s. Cal Ripken Jr. played 2,632 consecutive games at shortstop, nearly 17 years without missing a single start at the most physically demanding infield position in the sport, a streak that by itself tells you almost everything about the durability the position quietly demands even when nobody's counting. Derek Jeter spent 2 decades at the position for the Yankees, and Francisco Lindor has built 4 Gold Gloves doing the same relentless, off-balance work that eventually convinces almost every shortstop's front office that a quieter position might be a kinder one. The position's aging curve is one of the most predictable in the sport for exactly this reason. Nearly every elite shortstop who plays long enough eventually gets asked, gently, to slide over to second base, not because the bat declined, but because the specific combination of range, arm strength, and explosive first-step quickness that the position demands is simply the hardest set of physical attributes in the sport to maintain deep into a player's 30s. Pitcher. Number 2, and the damage here isn't repetitive wear on a joint from fielding. It's a single, violent motion the human body was never actually built to repeat. At the top of a pitcher's delivery, the throwing shoulder rotates at roughly 7,500 degrees per second, faster than a helicopter rotor blade, while the elbow absorbs torque that exceeds what the ligament holding it together was biologically designed to handle by a significant margin. Evolution built the human arm to throw a light object at moderate speed with real rest in between. Professional pitching asked for something close to 100 miles an hour, upwards of 90 to 100 pitches a night, every 5 days, for 6 straight months. The numbers on the long-term cost are stark. A meaningful share of pitchers who consistently throw in the mid to high 90s will need a major elbow reconstruction surgery at some point within just a few years of that workload. A procedure that replaces a torn ligament with a tendon harvested from somewhere else in the body and carries well over a year of recovery. Some of the most dominant arms in the sport's history have walked away from the game entirely in their prime, specifically because the joint simply couldn't keep making the payment the position demanded of it. It's the only position on this list where a single pitch thrown correctly is already partial payment toward an injury that just hasn't been diagnosed yet. Sandy Koufax retired at 30 years old, at the absolute peak of his powers, because doctors told him his elbow was worn down to the bone. The best pitcher on the planet, forced out of the game not by a loss of skill but by a joint that simply refused to keep cashing the checks his talent kept writing. Jacob deGrom, in a more recent era with better medicine and more careful workload management, has still missed hundreds of days to injury across a career built on some of the most statistically dominant pitching seasons of the modern game. The arm doesn't negotiate, it just eventually sends the bill. What separates pitching from every other position on this list is a total absence of any way to reduce the risk while still competing at the top level. A catcher can, in theory, block fewer balls in the dirt at the cost of some pass balls. A shortstop can play a step shallower and sacrifice some range. A pitcher cannot throw a 91-mile-an-hour fastball with slightly less torque and still get major league hitters out. The violence of the motion isn't a stylistic choice, it's the entire product. There's no safer version of the job available at the level the position demands. Catcher, most destructive. And number one, the position that ends this list because nothing else on the field comes close. You've been crouching since the second inning, not figuratively, actually crouching, dropping into a full squat and rising back up somewhere around 150 times across 9 innings, with your quadriceps absorbing roughly 1.5 times your own body weight on every single descent. By the 4th inning, your legs feel like they've been filled with wet concrete. By the 9th, standing up straight like an ordinary person is a distant memory. You're doing all of that in 40 pounds of equipment in a stadium where the temperature and humidity are actively working against you, essentially operating as a human pressure cooker with a mitt attached, and that's before anything actually happens to you physically. A foul tip off the mask at close to 95 miles an hour, not even a real swing, just a glancing tip, the least dramatic outcome of an at-bat still delivers over 1,000 joules of kinetic energy straight into your skull, and you absorb hundreds of those across a season. You block balls in the dirt by putting your own body between a 90-mile-an-hour pitch and the backstop on purpose repeatedly. And when a 200-plus pound runner comes barreling down the third base line with home plate as the only thing standing between him and a run, the sport has historically asked you to plant your feet and simply become the obstacle. Every other position on this list gets hurt by accident. Catcher is the only one where getting hit is built into the actual job description. Yadier Molina caught for the Cardinals for 19 seasons, absorbing that exact workload every single night with the authority of someone directing an entire pitching staff from a full squat. Ivan Rodriguez threw out base stealers at a rate nearly 20 points higher than the league average for most of his career. A release time so fast it defied easy explanation for a man wearing full equipment, and Johnny Bench was already considered the best defensive catcher in his league at 20 years old, a compliment that came bundled with 2 more decades of exactly the physical toll described above. No other position on this list produces careers that age the way catcher does, not gradually, but all at once. The moment the knees finally send back a bill, the body can no longer pay. It's also the one position on this list where the sport itself has quietly acknowledged the problem rather than just accepting it as tradition. Rule changes in recent years have limited how much contact a runner can legally initiate at the plate, specifically because the collisions were producing injuries severe enough that the league could no longer treat them as an unavoidable cost of the job. That the sport had to legislate protection for exactly one position, and only one, tells you everything about where catcher actually sits on this list. That's all 8, worst to first. If your favorite position made the list somewhere you didn't expect, drop a like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel keep making these.